Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third official edition of the Throwing Snowballs podcast with PR52. This episode is brought to you by Head Coaching Interviews with the Philadelphia Eagles. You get an interview, and you get an interview, and you get an interview. Guaranteed. All jokes aside, I have one topic that I've been planning on talking about for a while, and I'm going to talk about that before I talk about the Eagles' head coaching search. And I finally have time to talk about the whole Carson Wentz getting drugged through the mud by the media. And I've been wanting to talk about this for about two weeks now, ever since I've started this podcast, and there's been so much drama with the Philadelphia Eagles that I just haven't had a point in time to discuss it. So this all began in Week 15, the week after Jalen Hurts won his first game against the New Orleans Saints. Of course, the New Orleans Saints, they had one of the best defenses in the NFL, but they had Taysom Hill at quarterback. He's not as good as Drew Brees, certainly not as good as Jameis Winston was. But, he was a manageable backup quarterback. I never understood why they kept playing him and not Jameis Winston. Maybe it was because of his contract or something like that, but, it was going to be Jalen's second start. It was against the Arizona Cardinals. It was Saturday, I believe. And Adam Schefter of ESPN Insider, he put out an article talking about how a source told him that Carson Wentz was not happy with what was going on in Philadelphia. And obviously people went over and they hearkened back to the fact that Carson Wentz had just gotten benched for Jalen Hurts 2 weeks previous in the game against the Packers. And once this news dropped, and I can understand, if you just got benched, you'd be unhappy with what happened. You might be unhappy with yourself. You might be unhappy with a few other people. But everybody on Twitter, everybody who was reporting about this was like, the Eagles are going to trade Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz wants to be traded. Carson Wentz is a crybaby. Carson Wentz needs to work for what he does. And I think I said this in the last podcast, or two podcasts ago, about Ryan Clark, who was ready to, replace the Rocky statue in front of the art museum for a statue of Jalen Hurts. And everyone was talking about how Carson Wentz was a crybaby. He needed to leave. He wasn't mentally fit enough. And the next day, or 2 days later, I think it was, Adam Schefter comes out with a backtrack, being like, I never actually spoke to Carson Wentz. So it's very unfair that he's being classified as, this crybaby and someone who doesn't want to work for what he has, because he's been a good soldier. I just personally believe that he's unhappy and, he wants out when the season's over. So that's a little backtrack. You're going to see some backtracks along the way in all of this. Well, then 2 weeks later, right before the Eagles-Washington football team game in Week 17, Morten Andersen comes out on the NFL countdown show right before the games start. And he came out and said, I believe, or I'm speculating, that Carson Wentz at the end of the season, or after the season's over, is going to want to be traded. And I think he's going to be traded to the Indianapolis Colts. This started yet another cycle of people being like, Carson Wentz is a crybaby. Carson Wentz, he doesn't have what it takes. He's not mentally strong enough to be a quarterback. He's not a good teammate. He's selfish. He's egotistical. And yet another cycle of me having to be like, no. He literally said, we speculate. We think. This is what we think is going to happen. And again, everyone's just going crazy. Carson Wentz is this bad person. When it's just like, dude, you have to look at what these people are saying. Twitter and the internet and sports media just plays this awful game of telephone everyone knows the game of telephone. Everyone knows how that works, right? The first person has an idea or a saying, and it says it to the next person. They whisper it, and as it goes along the chain, as the message goes along the chain, it starts changing, right? It goes from, we speculate that Carson Wentz is going to want to be traded at the end of the season or during the offseason, to Carson Wentz wants to get traded, and we know this. Even though it wasn't even a source, it was we speculate. And, as a fan, you just sit there and it just ingrains in your mind. You just don't even want to be on Twitter. Twitter's just cancerous to you and your mental health, because you're watching these people regurgitate false information and you're like, dude, look at the original source. And even Chris Mortensen kind of had to backtrack the next day as well, obviously a theme, and say something along the lines of, well, I'm going to believe my sources, of course, but, I'm just going to believe whatever I'm going to believe because Carson Wentz isn't coming out and saying anything. And, of course, after the last game, Carson didn't say anything. He said, I'm just going to take a break from everything. I'm just going to leave, whatever. And he doesn't have to speak to the media because he didn't start. You don't have to speak to the media if you don't start in the game. So that's kind of like what the league does. And he doesn't have to speak to the media if he doesn't want to. And who would want to speak to the media? Anything he says is going to get scrambled and punched around, and it's just so much extra chaos. And Carson Wentz is a decent person. And then about 2 weeks goes by. Of course, every bad thing happens every 2 weeks. I'm expecting in about 2 weeks an article coming out talking about how Carson Wentz is an axe murderer. So I think it was Friday or Saturday, I forget which one. Jeff McLane, who is a Philly reporter, I call him Jeff McLame. He comes out with an article talking about how Carson Wentz's personality and Carson Wentz's inability to accept criticism was the thing that got in the way in Philadelphia, and you're going to have to fix those things before you fix Carson Wentz. And what was really comical about this article was the fact that when I first read it, I was like, some of this information is just completely irrelevant. The article starts out with, Howie Roseman is this big fan of Carson Wentz's because he's got this fathead shrine of Carson Wentz in his office. And when I read this, I was like, okay, well then I expect him to have nothing but Carson Wentz in his office, him to be the biggest Carson Wentz fanatic. And then someone showed the receipts. Someone showed what his actual office looks like. And it's a regular office. It's got a fat head of Carson Wentz who, people claim to be the franchise quarterback. And it also has a shrine of Fletcher Cox, who's one of the better defensive tackles in the NFL. And I'm like, okay, so either you were exaggerating or you just flat out lied, because that's not a shrine to Carson Wentz. It looks like a regular office. It's just decorated in Eagles stuff, popular Eagles players, Carson Wentz and Fletcher Cox. So that, I found that to be a little bit ridiculous. I was like, why is this information in here? And if Howie Roseman is this huge fan of Carson Wentz, why did he draft Jalen Hurts? And then a few sentences later, it talks about how Carson Wentz had way too much power and way too much influence on who was drafted, who were free agents, and who the Eagles brought into their coaching staff. And I thought to myself, Carson Wentz had influence on the Eagles drafting J.J. Arcega-Whiteside? Carson Wentz had influence on the Eagles drafting Donnell Pumphrey? Did Carson Wentz have influence on the Eagles drafting Jalen Hurts, his quote-unquote possible, successor? That just makes no sense. Why do you even put that in an article? That's just ridiculous. That doesn't even prove your point. It doesn't make any sense. Why would Carson Wentz actively go out there and pick a guy, have influence on picking a guy who might replace him? It doesn't make any sense. I don't understand the reason why that's even there. That just makes you Jeff McClaim. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I told someone to make one of those memes, the Scooby-Doo unmasking thing, where it was like Howie Roseman is like the monster and Fred is ripping the mask off the monster, and the guy who's wearing the Howie Roseman mask is Carson Wentz. It's just ridiculous. Why are you even putting that in an article? It's just useless. People can pick that half to death. It's just a fail. It's just a lolcow is what that is. And I honestly stopped reading the article after that because I'm like, dude, you just lost credibility. When people are just sitting there nitpicking your article, you're not going anywhere, dude. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that Howie Roseman is this huge Carson Wentz fan, but he went ahead and drafted Jalen Hurts. Or are you going to go ahead and blame Carson Wentz for why Jalen Hurts was drafted at that? Are we just going to blame Carson Wentz for everything? But I saw a few other quotes from this article, which from, taking these quotes together, it kind of seemed more like an anti-Doug Peterson article than an anti-Carson Wentz article, even though Jeff McClaim was more than likely looking to bash Carson Wentz because it's now popular to bash Carson Wentz. He's not a popular player anymore like he was before 2 years ago. At least you could say Joseph Santoliquito had the balls to write a hit piece about Carson Wentz when he was popular. Jeff McClaim is just like, I'm just going to write this piece and no one likes Carson Wentz. I'm going to get clicks and everyone's just going to believe everything that I have to say, even though my sources are, dude, just trust me. There was a part in the article where it talks about Carson Wentz and Press Taylor being the quarterback's coach, and Press Taylor telling Carson Wentz, "Hey man, there's a read that you didn't see, or a guy you didn't pass to. Why didn't you pass to him?" And Carson Wentz says something like, or according to the article, Carson Wentz says, I didn't see him open or something like that, and basically inferring that Carson Wentz and Press Taylor butted heads or something like that. And I don't even know how you would know that happened unless the leak was in the quarterback room. So who was the leak? Was it Nate Sudfeld? Was it Jalen Hurts? Did Carson Wentz, narc on himself? Was Press Taylor the leak or the mole? We'll never know because Doug Peterson didn't keep a good house below him or above him, or he allowed his players to say whatever they wanted to the media, which a good coach probably wouldn't do. He just let people sing like a bird. And then there was a part in the article where it said that Carson Wentz would kill plays at the line of scrimmage because he didn't respect Doug Peterson, which, again, that just seems like pure speculation. There just seems to be a problem with these, members of the media, these writers who write these articles where they speculate way too much and they just put it out like it's fact. And then it said something like Carson Wentz didn't talk to Doug Peterson, or Doug Peterson didn't talk to Carson Wentz. They didn't talk to each other, which, if that's true, it seems like that's more of a problem with Doug Peterson. You're not even talking to your quarterback. And then what was funny was the fact that a day later, someone comes out and says, yeah, I talked to Doug Peterson about that, and he was like, no, that's not true. So Jeff McClaim just basically lied through his teeth. Does that make you feel good that you just go ahead and lie? Were you really thinking, people did really eat that up. People really ate this article up. They really thought that this was true. But it really wasn't. Jeff McClaim, here's what Jeff McClaim deserves. He deserves for someone to write a hit piece on him. He deserves for anonymous sources, whether they're real or fake, to come out and write a hit piece on him, on how scummy of a person he is, and how he has no credibility at this point. And he's just a vile human being who decided, hey, I'm just going to go after somebody who it's popular to hate on. It's popular to hate on Carson Wentz, so why not do it? I'll get clicks. dude, you deserve to have every single person who follows you to just unfollow you. None of these guys are going to change until we start holding them to account, start holding them to the flame. And these dudes are just going to keep writing BS like this until we do that. And then Jeff McLean comes out and he doubles down. Some silly double down. Some silly backtrack. Oh, I didn't mean to. It's not a hit piece. Oh, no. You're a joke. You are just a literal joke. And it's not because I'm a huge fan of Carson Wentz. You know, I'm someone who kind of wants Carson Wentz to eventually be traded so he can go to a team where he's actually going to succeed and excel. Why would anybody want to be here with the scummy media? And sometimes the fans eat it up. I'm not so tough on the fans because a lot of the fans trust these members of the media. Stop trusting these members of sports media, especially Philly media. Philly media is absolutely vile. They don't know what they're talking about. They just put out stories because dangle it like cheese in front of us rats and hope we talk about it. So I feel like Jeff McLean, that was just a waste of time. There's just a waste of everybody's time. You're just a waste of everybody's time. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean that in a way to be like, dude, you have no credibility anymore, my man. I hope you understand that. So we're gonna move on from the whole Carson Wentz thing, and we're gonna talk about the head coaching search. And of course, the head coaching search it's been kind of hilarious because, you know, it just goes to show how much we as fans have no idea what the coaching search is, or what it's like, or what goes into it. And I'm not one of those people who's like, hey, you know, I'm going to agree with whatever the team says because I'm not that kind of person. Everyone knows that I'm not that kind of person, especially not anymore. You know, with the whole Howie Roseman, Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz thing, you know, I feel like I kind of lost my critical thinking. And I'm not going to be one of those people who goes into situations and is going to love everything. But when they started this head coaching search about a week late because they fired Doug Peterson or parted ways with Doug Peterson a week late, I was of the mindset of, I want this team to go ahead and interview as many people as possible. I want as many people as possible to be interviewed. And that's what they've been doing. You know, when I talk, see what everyone has. Bounce ideas off of people. A lot of these other teams, like the Jets and the Falcons, they kind of interviewed like two people and they picked the best one, right? The Jets got Robert Saleh, who I think Robert Saleh is a fine coach. Arthur Smith was the Falcons head coach, Cop Pizzle's doppelganger. And I think Dan Campbell might be the head coach of the Lions soon. I think Brandon Staley is his name, the defensive coordinator for the Rams is about to, you know, play his home games in the same stadium. And I think that's it. If I'm not mistaken, the last two spots are the Texans and the Eagles. And I really think that the Texans are going to work really hard to get Eric Bieniemy. I don't know why Eric Bieniemy is not a coach. My brain kind of says racism, but then I'm like, you know, I just want to wait and see. People have been saying that he doesn't interview well. That just sounds like a bit of BS to me. I mean, he's been a pretty successful coach, and, you know, you look at him and, like, all of these coordinators who become coaches are successful, so I guess why not him? But I would love to have Eric Bieniemy. I really would. But the Texans really want Eric Bieniemy because that's one way they could try to keep Deshaun Watson, because one of Deshaun Watson's demands is that he wants Eric Bieniemy to be the head coach. So, you know, maybe the Eagles can pry that situation. Who knows? Who really knows what's going to end up happening there? I would have never promised Deshaun Watson the things that the Houston Texans promised Deshaun. You'd be able to have a say in picking the general manager. Like, you're going to sit at the audition desk, and he's going to audition to us, and you're going to pick him. And you're going to pick the head coach. You are King Deshaun. I don't... look, I'm not going to blame him for being upset. I just wouldn't have promised him that. Like, he's this is going to be his 5th year in the NFL. I don't think that, I wouldn't even do that for Patrick Mahomes. I wouldn't even do that for anybody. Maybe like Brady and Rodgers, guys who have been there since like Vietnam. I don't know. I think that it's even a ridiculous idea for those two. Like, you're a player. I understand that, you would want to say in what's going on, especially when Bill O'Brien kind of went rogue a few times, but I just think it's ridiculous that they even promised him that, like a huge say that he was going to be at the audition table to pick the new head coach and general manager. I think that was silly. So really, the Eagles' head coaching decision has come down to a few guys. They interviewed Todd Bowles. I think they're going to interview, or they already interviewed, the Colts offensive coordinator, which is kind of crazy because Frank Reich helped them win the Super Bowl, and now Frank Reich's offensive coordinator, they said they had a good interview, which I expect them to have a good interview. Reportedly, the only person who had a bad interview was Doug Peterson during his first meeting with the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, and Howie Roseman. They were talking about how he came unprepared. Guys are saying Joe Brady. Joe Brady's like 32 years old, so he's a young buck. And he was the quarterback's coach for Joe Burrow at LSU, and then he was offensive coordinator for the Panthers. And, people say nice things about him. I don't know. I don't really know what to think. I'm not someone who looks at somebody's track record when it comes to play calling and says, hey, you're going to be a great head coach. So I'm going to get to my personal thought processes on, what I want in a head coach later on in this, hopefully. And then a big candidate that rose up was Josh McDaniels. And when they talk about Josh McDaniels, the fans went crazy on Twitter. Like, apparently Josh McDaniels had like a 9-hour interview, and people were like, okay, he's going to be the head coach. I hate this. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I'm gonna be a fan of the Cincinnati Bengals if Josh McDaniels becomes the head coach. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're going to continue to be a Philadelphia Eagles fan, whether they're good or bad. And if you're not, then good luck to you. Good luck to you. Don't come back. That's what I always say. I have no ill wills, but, just go to whatever team you want and stay with that team. A lot of people don't like Josh McDaniels because of what happened in Denver. Now, Josh McDaniels was a bit of a cancer. Now, it's not that Josh McDaniels wasn't knowledgeable about football. That's actually something that his players say, Josh McDaniels was really good at. He was really good at, the game. But when it came to motivating, he was kind of a jerk off. Actually, he was a huge jerk off. And it might have been because he was like 32 years old back then. You're really immature when you're 32 years old. I'm 31 and I'm still kind of immature, but I don't think I'm as immature as Josh McDaniels was. I think that Josh McDaniels went into Denver and he thought to himself, I can't do anything wrong. Bill Belichick, he was the head coach when I was the offensive coordinator in New England. I took Brady to the Super Bowl. And he had this amazing season with Randy Moss and Wes Welker, and we lost by 3 points. We barely lost the game. And then he becomes the offensive coordinator for them when Brady gets injured the next season, and their quarterback is Matt Castle. And Matt Castle wins 10 games. They missed the playoffs because of the fact that there were just 5 other teams that were better, and then the San Diego Chargers that went like 8-8 or something like that, or like 7-9. Crazily enough, they were so bad that they got their own home game, and then in overtime they beat a team. I think the Colts were like 12-4 that season, and they beat the Colts. The 12-4 team was a wild card team, and they ended up losing to an 8-8 San Diego Chargers team in overtime. Famous Darren Sproles game. I think that was the last season for the head coach of the Colts at that point in time. But regardless, Josh McDaniels goes to Denver. The first thing he does is he gets in this huge confrontation with Jay Cutler, who was the quarterback at the time. And basically, Jay Cutler leaves that meeting and he tells his agent, just whatever you can do, just get me out of here. And I think they traded him straight up for Kyle Orton. And that season, they went 8-8, and then the next season, they drafted Tim Tebow. They went 4-12. Josh McDaniels was caught taping a 49ers practice, little Spygate thing, and it got him fired. It's been 11 years, and I just hope that if we get him, I'm kind of talking myself into it, of course. I don't necessarily like Josh McDaniels, but I hope he has matured if he becomes our head coach. And of course, I might not support the decision, but I have to live with it. Oh, the Jaguars. The Jaguars got Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer, the guy who, whenever things get bad, he always goes, "Oh, my health," or "Oh, I need to be with my family." That's just basically code for the team has lost 2 games or there's a scandal and I have no chance of going to a championship game this year, so I'm going to leave. At the end of the day, I don't even think Urban Meyer's family even likes him. I mean, he just, screw your family. You said you cared about your health. You said you cared about your family, yet you continue to take head coaching opportunities and you be as far away as you can from your family. So I don't think Urban Meyer actually cares about his family. The final one head coaching candidate who everybody's been talking about is Deuce Staley. Deuce Staley, the running backs coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, and assistant head coach. He was a player for the Eagles. I think I said this in the video that I made. Check it out if you want to. It's called "Why Not Deuce Staley?" with a question mark. I'll link it in the podcast here on YouTube. But he was a running back from 97 to 2003, had this huge contract fight with Andy Reid, went to Pittsburgh, won the Super Bowl with them in 2005, retired in 2006, then came back in 2010 to be some sort of quality control coach, then was the running back coach in 2013, and then he ended up becoming an assistant head coach after the Eagles won the Super Bowl. So he's a guy who has a lot of experience with this team. Now, the fans do want Deuce Staley, but the people who have been fighting for Deuce Staley the most, reportedly, have been the players. The players really like Deuce Staley. Now, some of these players, they might not be back next year, but they obviously respect Deuce Staley. They obviously respect him enough to possibly be the next head coach of the Eagles, and they would like it. And there are a few things, again, I said this, if I was an alien and I came to Earth and I had, a list of requirements I would want in a head coach, Deuce Staley would just about check every box. A lot of people just don't like Deuce Staley because he's not a play caller, which I don't have a problem with. I don't really want a head coach that's going to be a play caller. Because my main thought process is the fact that if you have a head coach that's a play caller, there's less of a chance that they're going to go ahead and give up the play calling duties. I'm a real fan of what John Harbaugh does in Baltimore. I'm not a huge fan of John Harbaugh as a person, but what he does is he is just a manager. He's a game manager. He lets his offensive coordinator, he lets his defensive coordinator call the plays, and that's it. He just sits there and he manages the game. And outside of maybe one season, he's had a winning record throughout his whole entire career and is a Super Bowl winning head coach. And that's kind of like what Deuce Staley would be. A lot of people are like, well, if we were successful, we'd lose an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. Okay. But then you go out and you get an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator, which is something that Doug Peterson wasn't able to do. You go out there and you get successful people. You go out there and you collaborate with successful people who have successful ideas. And that just wasn't something that Doug Peterson had at the end. So, in effect, it wouldn't matter if Deuce Staley isn't a play caller, because you don't need to be a play caller to be a head coach. And inversely, there are some good play callers that are terrible head coaches. That's the thing. You look at these flashy guys and people get money signs in their eyes like they're Sean McVay. And I'm not saying that Joe Brady is going to be a bad head coach or a bad head coaching candidate, and all these other guys are going to be bad head coaching candidates because they were good coordinators. But what I'm saying is, there's a guy named Deuce Staley who is respected. And I think that you need to look at him and you need to respect him as a possible coach because he's a great motivator. And you look at Doug Peterson, wasn't a good motivator, especially in 2018, 2019, and 2020. Maybe in 2018 and 19 he was a good motivator down the stretch, but in September and October, these players didn't do like Dickie McGee's acts. They did nothing. We had a losing record in September and October, I think, overall. Maybe we had a 500 record. But regardless, Deuce Staley, while, he might not be a good play caller, I think Deuce Staley could be possibly a good head coach. And the fact of the matter is that he's been very loyal to this franchise while he's been a coach. So I think no matter who becomes our head coach, I think Deuce Staley is definitely, someone you've got to keep. Someone who you need to carry over from the previous regime. But I don't have a problem with them taking a while. I think that you need to look around and see all these, possible head coaches. And a lot of fans are like, I don't want this head coach or head coaching candidate because they failed elsewhere. We're talking about Josh McDaniels. Well, okay, there are a lot of head coaches that have failed elsewhere. Does that mean you're not going to bring them in? It just doesn't make any sense to me in that situation. Twitter has basically been like this. Like, the players, they want Deuce Staley. The fans, they want Joe Brady. The owner and the GM, they want Josh McDaniels. Nobody wants Adam Gase. And then I think members of the media would say, like, according to some Twitter bot, the Eagles are going to sign Adam Gase to be their head coach. And then all of Eagles Twitter just goes crazy because they think that Adam Gase is going to be our head coach. Could Adam Gase be our head coach? Possibly. I don't even think we've interviewed Adam Gase, so I don't think so. But basically, all I can say is none of us know anything about signing a head coach or head coaching candidates or anything that they go through. We just look at the media, and the media tells us a bunch of BS and speculates, oh, Brian Daboll is going to be the Chargers head coach because, he boinked the ex-girlfriend of the Chargers general manager or something like that, something silly like that. Just pure speculation from everybody. But they report it because it's a slow news day, of course. The last thing that I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about concussions in the playoffs. Now, last year, Carson Wentz suffered this huge concussion from Jadeveon Clowney. Dirty hit. There was no fine at all. Even though he led with the helmet right in the head. That's like the targeting thing, right? He was going down. He was a defenseless player. Not even the NFL was like, it's Carson Wentz. He's a ginger. Who cares? On Saturday, Lamar Jackson, the 2019 MVP, league MVP, he got a concussion and he was taken out of the game. And I wish him well. The Bills, to their credit, they sent money to Lamar Jackson's charity, which I think it's full of class. Good on them. And then on Sunday, Patrick Mahomes gets a concussion. And his was a little worse because when they were trying to get him up, it was like, whoa. Like, it was almost as if, like, he had no idea where he was. And what's kind of hypocritical to me is you have people like Josina Anderson, which I have zero respect for Josina Anderson. Last year when Carson Wentz got his concussion, Josina Anderson was like, it's always something with Carson Wentz. Yeah, I know you don't like Carson Wentz. And then when it came to Lamar Jackson, she was like, Lamar Jackson got injured. I feel so sorry for him. I feel so bad for him. I'm not trying to hypocrisy burn because I think I like Lamar Jackson. I like Patrick Mahomes, but come on, Josina. Like, along with Jeff McClain, someone should also write a hit piece on Josina Anderson. And, you know, obviously she's not at ESPN anymore. Somebody go ahead and write an article about how hard to work with Josina Anderson was at ESPN, and that's why she's no longer there. So, you know, someone write that hit piece. But, of course, you know, Patrick Mahomes also gets a concussion, and that was a situation where they were like, okay, what are they going to do? Because they've got a backup in. They are winning, but, of course, the Browns, they're no slouch. They've got Baker Mayfield, and Baker Mayfield has been playing pretty well all season. Well, it basically comes down to the last play, and Andy Reid has ever since he's come to the Chiefs, he's just had balls of steel. These are things he would never do with the Eagles. They're winning by 5 points, I think. It's 4th down, and I was like, okay, you got to punt. You got to punt. Like, it's 4th and 1, but you got to punt. Like, you just got to trust your defense here just to stop the other team, to stop the Browns from scoring. Andy Reid, who's got bowling balls, just 4th down play with his backup quarterback throws an out route to, I think it was Tyreek Hill in the slot, and he catches the first down. He goes down, and I'm like, oh, the trust you've got to have in your backup quarterback there who barely ever plays. But Patrick Mahomes is in concussion protocol. And they're playing a Bills team who's really good. The Bills are a good team at home. They're playing in Kansas City at Arrowhead. But it's going to be one hell of a game. But people are not sure if Patrick Mahomes is going to play. Because you have to pass concussion protocol. And there are guys in the NFL who they're independent doctors who have to make sure that these guys pass protocol. And I think it was Colin Cowherd who came out and was like, they should delay that game so Patrick Mahomes can come back. What are you talking about? Look at all these other games that weren't delayed. The Raiders game wasn't delayed. The Broncos game, they had a wide receiver playing quarterback. That wasn't delayed. The Browns had to play with 0 wide receivers. No. That's ridiculous, dude. It's not that they had COVID. He has a concussion. And people were like, the NFL would never stop the Golden Boy from coming back from a concussion. Do you think these doctors would risk their reputations and their medical licenses to bring these dudes back? No. I like the rule of having them, there's an independent doctor coming in and making sure that these guys are okay. Because the alternative would be disastrous. Dudes would be playing with concussions. If anyone's ever seen the movie Not Another Teen Movie, right? Say goodbye to Reggie Ray. After he gets his 80th concussion. No. I think is a good idea. If Patrick Mahomes is not ready, he shouldn't play. That's why you have a backup quarterback. Philadelphia Eagles won a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback. Baltimore Ravens won a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback. Giants won a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback. The Redskins, now the Washington football team, they won a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback. The Raiders won 2 Super Bowls with a backup quarterback. Sometimes you just got to have your backup in. The Colts won a Super Bowl with their backup quarterback a long time ago. So sometimes a backup quarterback could make you successful, could make you pretty good. But I just think Colin Cowherd is absolutely ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. And if you're a Chiefs fan, Patrick Mahomes, he's like a $40-50 million a year, liability. if this does massive damage to him. He's getting married. He's going to have a kid. It's ridiculous. I think that you got to be responsible about that. And if you have to go in there with a backup quarterback, then you go in there with a backup quarterback. You won the game with a backup quarterback against a pretty good Browns team. But we'll see what happens there. We're going to wrap this up. This was the third official episode of the Throwing Snowballs podcast with PR52. Make sure that you follow me on Twitter at PR5210. And make sure you subscribe to the channel PR52 for more updates and more videos. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your night. Hopefully this video comes out before the Eagles sign a head coach, or else I'll have egg all over my face. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good rest of your night. See ya.